Most of the time I was on the way to the liquor store to find the next bottle. And I finally went out to one of his services, and I remember he did an altar call, and I was standing in the back, and I knew two things. Number one, if I died, I earned a one-way ticket straight to hell. There was no question in my mind. Number two, if Jesus was real and he really died for me and loved me, I wasn't going to resist that offer. So I remember tears came down my eyes, and I walked to the altar, and I said, Jesus, I'm a broken man. I give my life to you. Do with it whatever you want. Boy, that was a dangerous prayer.
Are you tied up or involved in something that's holding you back? Are you struggling with addiction? Are you having relationship problems? Are you feeling a lot of anxiety and loneliness? We all face our struggles, and today you're not going to want to miss this episode with Pastor Anthony Thomas. We are going to be talking about a gentleman from a barroom brawler turned believer to a power-packed pastor. We are blessed to have Pastor Anthony today. He is a veteran fighter and now pastor of Tip of the Spear Church. He's going to take us through his journey from brawls to bar fights and preaching the gospel. He used to say, I didn't just like alcohol, I loved it. And with that, you're just going to want to stay tuned and not miss any portion of this episode. Welcome to Lessons for Life with Dr. Ron. Today we have Lessons for Life with Dr. Ron, Bill, and Pastor Anthony in the house here at Seat to Table. If you're ever in town, we're usually here on Tuesday mornings from 9 to noon. We'd love to meet you. The foundations of Lessons for Life is just what we're doing today with Pastor Anthony. It's a testimonial, something that you've walked through, something that's happened in your life, something you've been gifted that can transform and touch someone else. So it's taking you out of it and serving others. That's the whole purpose of Lessons for Life. We're blessed to have Seat to Table where we record. This is our studio, and we'd love to meet you. We have coffee downstairs. We'd love to have you. And please support the channel. If this touches you in any way, people ask how they can assist us and help us. Please like and subscribe. That is greatly, greatly appreciated. It doesn't cost you anything at all. And with that, my intro is going to be Pastor Anthony Thomas has lived two very different lives. He's a Marine veteran, a fighter, and in his own words, someone who loved to get drunk, but then everything changed. From bar fights to Bible, from anger to redemption, his story shows us that no one is too far gone for God's grace. You do not want to miss this conversation and Pastor Anthony's testimony. So to begin with, we're going to go to early life. So the question I have for Pastor Anthony is, tell us a little bit about your upbringing. You're from Oregon. And what was life like growing up, as we kind of get a little background of what your life was?
Yeah, well, to get a little bit of background, even before me, my family had two kind of very polar different tracks. So on my dad's side, half of the family, the Dodge side, most of them were preachers and very fiery preachers and did a lot of amazing things. On the Thomas side, almost every one of them were combat veterans. All of them had seen war. My dad, my great uncles, my grandfather, and all of them turned to alcohol and fighting and womanizing as kind of the pastime of the family line. So my dad was fought in the Tet Offensive in 68, 69, saw a lot of death. A lot of his men got killed, had to kill a lot of men. His own cousin got killed in action. And my dad got out and tried to deal with all of it through education, went and got a master's degree, became very successful, and then one day the PTSD just overtook him, and he went out in the mountains in Northern California and started a very lucrative drug operation. And I was born in the middle of that. So my dad, at a young age, I can remember him, he was running with a lot of outlaw bikers and selling drugs in 5 different states, and I grew up around a lot of violence and a lot of addiction and so to me, the epitome of being a man was you became a Marine and then you did a lot of violent stuff. So the individuals I grew up around, I grew up in kind of a poorer, tougher neighborhood. Most of the guys didn't have dads, and the ones that did were all came out of the same stock. So we just grew up together in a very kind of a tribe mentality of living life, of being drunk and out partying and fighting. And so that was the life I knew. And I'm the type of person, if I do something, I do it all in. So I did it all in.
So as far as what you said with your background, your family history, as far as you being in the Marines, Was that just natural, or is there someone led you there? What did that look like, just getting involved in the military?
It was very natural. I always knew that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to be like my dad. It probably saved me looking backwards on it, because not only God was going to use that experience towards the end to lead me to Christ, but most of my friends that did not end up dying within a few years after. By the time I got out, and within 2 to 3 years, by the time I was 25, 3/4 of my friends had already died through overdose, through various different things. The lifestyle just caught up with them. So that was my experience. The Marine Corps, in some aspects, honed in a lot of the negative things I was doing. I became celebrated for my fighting ability and different stuff, and drinking also. But it also taught me discipline, and it taught me things. And one of the things it taught me is endurance, how to endure something that's brutal and horrible and get to the other side of it.
Yeah, you jump way ahead of me, because I said, how did that, being in the Marines, shape the outlook on your life at that time? And then also, did military life intensify your struggles with anger and alcohol?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, drinking is part of the pastime in the Marines, and so is fighting. And one of the things that caused me to, even in boot camp, is I was very good at fighting. And when I found out that you were celebrated for it, it was very much similar, to be honest, to the lifestyle I grew up in. My dad trained us that way. All of us got in MMA at very young ages, and fighting was just a way of life that we learned growing up. All of us, me, my younger sister, and my younger brother. That was just kind of the life we knew. So there was a lot of things in the Marine Corps, even going through boot camp, that seemed very similar to the life I grew up in.
So would you say that naturally were you an angry person in your younger years?
No, not naturally.
Because when I hear about fighting, I think of anger, just someone who's angry, something that's happened that's made you angry, just to physically beat up people.
Yeah. No, naturally I'm very protective naturally. I've always been a protector. I was in a lot of environments where you either fought or you got just crushed. I can remember even in high school, the high school I went to, there was a lot of gang activity and a lot of very violent individuals. And I can remember going in as a freshman year, I couldn't even tell you the amount of fights I had to get in, and it was simply to survive. So, I think that's a lot of people. They learn to either be victimized or fight your way through it. And then there becomes a point where it becomes just a lifestyle, and you don't even know you're sucked into something.
I think, looking back, that wasn't my life. I had a very kind upbringing compared to what we're talking about. And what that makes me think is there's so many people that are going to watch this video. You have people on one side of the street or on the other side of the street, and you just really touched on something for me. For many people that we look at in a negative way, we don't always recognize that it was, you just said the word, it was survival.
It was survival.
Not necessarily you're just a bad person. It's a matter of keeping yourself, really above the grass.
Yeah.
So as far as your love of alcohol, I put down. You said you didn't just like the drink. You talked about it at your church. I think it's a profound statement. You said you really loved getting drunk. Mm-hmm. I believe. Tell me if I quote you wrong. But what was it regarding alcohol? For those that are struggling right now, there's going to be one of the big parts of this testimony today is so many people out there are struggling either with some form of addiction, whether it's alcohol, whether it's cocaine, whether it's pornography, whatever addiction they have. For you, what was that draw to really love? Again, I never had that addictive personality. Bill will talk about himself as well, but the love of actually being inebriated, or however you want to describe it. I'm very curious.
I would say there's three things that come to my mind. Number one, my dad dealing with all of the anger because of what war did to him. The only time and my dad didn't know Jesus till later in life. Now he's a wonderful man and he serves Christ. But before then, it was the only time I saw him happy was when he was drunk or high. So there was that connection. I actually preferred as a kid growing up when my dad was drunk because he was in his kindest state. The two things it did for me, number one, and it helped me escape a reality, and I think that's what all addiction is. The reality you live in at that time is something you want a different reality. So there was that. And then the other thing for me, it intensified whatever feeling or emotion. So I always used to tell people I was either the life of the party, or I loved to absolutely, get in fights and different things. Whatever emotion was in me, it intensified. There was no brake pad. That's why I don't drink, simply because, and that does not mean I think it's biblically wrong. There's nothing wrong with going out and have a glass of wine or a beer. What there is wrong is when you get drunk. And when you get drunk, you have no brake pad. So whatever emotion's in you is going to come out full vent.
You're right on point. You're tracking with me, because I said, does this cause you, or has this caused you to make many poor decisions? Which I guess is a silly question. Anybody that knows when your natural thinking process is blunted by a drug, but obviously there are people that think that they operate better sometimes in a state of high from marijuana or a little bit of alcohol. I've had friends in my life that thought that they were actually better in that state, believe it or not. And so some people can be really skewed into.
One of my lows I remember before I got sober was I was still on base in Paris Island and got in a big fight that night, and was absolutely drunker than a skunk. And I remember waking up in a bathtub covered in my own vomit with blood on my knuckles, and someone helping clean it off of me. And this was right before I gave my life to Christ. And I remember at that moment being at one of the absolute lows of my life, going, what has this lifestyle brought me? I mean, I'm literally laying here in my own puke and blood in a bathtub with someone trying to clean it off of me. So yeah, I don't see the glory in that.
Yeah. And as far as, obviously you weren't afraid to fight. And so that the fighter's mentality, a lot of times Bill might even talk about a book he was teaching on called Masculinity by Lewis Howes. Was the fighting masking? I'd written down as masking any pain or emptiness. Was any addition behind that? Again, just looking at that, that behavior, and we talked about survival.
Yeah. Well, there was two things. I've never been someone, I had friends of mine that I ran with that I think loved causing other people pain. That was never me. I was never going to back down. If someone messed with me, I would stand my ground, or if someone messed with friends of mine. But I grew up in a culture of guys around me that if stuff hit the fan, which it did pretty frequently, hit the crap ale, none of us were going to back down. I wasn't in, now you see a lot of, and I don't say this negatively, but we live and remember, this was before cell phones. So you could do a lot of stuff, and as long as you were away before the cops got there, you were okay. That you probably couldn't do that. So, no, I never liked, like I said, but I was one of the individuals, if you messed with me or my friends, I was never going to back down.
Is there any particular story that you remember that you look at when it comes to your fighting that you shake your head at now? Anything profound?
I look at all of it. There was a lot of, in this life, I've had battles or things that I was supposed to fight, and there were others that were an absolute waste of time. And so I look at now, whatever I have belongs to God. My strength, my voice, whatever time He's given me on this life. So now I try to, being older and hopefully wiser, before I get into anything, I ask God, do you need me in this capacity? And if the answer is no, I stay out of it. That is not always easy. I still have emotions just like you do, and there's times where stuff, but I think all of us, the Bible's very clear that when we live an angry lifestyle, we're going to do foolish things. So I have to be aware of that. I guard myself against it, and I try not to put myself in environments where those kind of things happen on a frequent level.
So the turning point, everybody wants to know when there's that turning point. So was there a point where you hit rock bottom, I have here, or something that woke you up, that really made that change in you?
Yeah, I was drinking myself literally to death. I got called into a battalion chaplain named Colonel Dunn, and I had the battalion sergeant major standing next to me. If you ever met a Marine sergeant major, they're terrifying individuals. And I had to stand before the colonel, and Marines, I call you by your last name. He said, Thomas, you're a damn good Marine, but I'm going to lose you. So I was mandated to go home on leave for a week. I went and literally almost drunk myself to death. I went home, And then when I came back, I was mandated to meet with a base chaplain. Now I'm working at Parris Island with drill instructors, some of the hardest of men you could ever meet. And in fact, where they filmed the movie Full Metal Jacket, that's where I was at. And, you know, kindness wasn't one of the highest attributes of the men I was around. It was just sheer raw fighting power, strength, and pride. And I meet this little chaplain named Chaplain Parker, who was the epitome of kindness. And I never really, he was genuine and he had something in him that I never grew up around. So it did strike me that this guy has something I don't. And I kept running into him in town and he'd just smile at me and wave. Most of the time I was on the way to the liquor store to find the next bottle. And I finally went out to one of his services and I remember he did an altar call and I was standing in the back and I knew two things. Number one, if I died, I earned a one-way ticket straight to hell. There was no question in my mind. Number two, if Jesus was real and he really died for me and loved me, I wasn't going to resist that offer. So I remember tears came down my eyes and I walked to the altar and I said, Jesus, I'm a broken man. I give my life to you. Do with it whatever you want. Boy, that was a dangerous prayer. So that was the start of the turning point for my life.
And by the way, Pastor Anthony is not a small man. Again, we've had some big fellas. If you haven't watched the podcast on Big Bill or Big Boxer Paul, there's a lot of alignment with these men. These are military men, strong men, and men of faith that went through trials of which nothing I've experienced, probably not Bill as well, from shooting, stabbings, killings, jail time, all of these things that I have these guests on that are trying to bring some teaching to you, especially now we have Pastor Anthony, which we're going to talk about. You know, I had down a question of, and I think you might have touched on it, but you know, what was that calling moment that really where God touched you? You felt a calling to turn to your faith. So
the weird thing for me, it actually happened before I got saved. I was home on leave and I remember I went to a fair they had and it was packed out. I remember smoking. I used to smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day, either Newports or Camel non-filters. And I was smoking a cigarette at night and I'm watching and these guys were preaching in Oregon, which is very hostile towards the gospel. And people were yelling at these dudes, spitting, throwing stuff at them. And I watched them and for about an hour, I was just absolutely couldn't move. I'm watching this thing and I'm smoking one cigarette after another. And I had 2 thoughts come to my mind. Number one, I thought, these guys are different because they were responding in strength, but in love and weren't retaliating. And then number 2, I thought, man, these guys got balls of steel because this was not an easy, environment. And as I'm pondering all this thing, and I know now it was the Holy Spirit, I heard a voice say to me, what you are watching, you will one day do. So after I got saved, I had $8 in my pocket. I went to a store called Albertsons. I made a sign with John 3:16 on it. And I started preaching outside of the bars and the clubs I used to hang out with. Well, I had a lot of street respect where I was from. Everyone knew, I was a wild man growing up, and then I went to the Marines, and so I had a lot of respect at the bars and the places. And when people saw me preaching on the streets, it freaked a lot of people out. I was waiting for that story. We're going to come back to that a little bit. Bill has a bunch of questions. He's itching to get in here. So another question I wrote down, I don't know how you respond to this. Did you think at that time that your faith or religion was for soft people, before you met Jesus, personally? The term soft, weak, I don't know, what were your thoughts before you really I had to overcome a lot of hurdles. I remember when I first stepped into a church, and this is kind of another unique story. I went in, I had a 64 Impala convertible, I'll never forget, beautiful car, and I roll in to a pretty prosperous kind of, very well-to-do people church, and I went in, and I'm sitting in the back, and honestly, I thought, man, these guys are a bunch of, I won't use the word I thought, but wuss bags, we'll call them that. And I don't want anything to do with this. And I was about ready to leave. I'm sitting there in the back going, gosh, this is not the culture I want to be a part of. And in the middle of it, the pastor that was speaking calls me out by name in the middle of a service, and there's hundreds of people. Anthony, is that you? And I looking around, thinking there's some other Anthony there, and then he keeps pointing at me. So, and as he's walking up, I go, oh my gosh, this pastor who led this church used to go out and do ministry to all the troubled kids. He was a very good basketball player. His name was Pastor Sean. And he went out to all the rough kids, myself being one of them, and would minister to us. And then he was very good at basketball. So we let him play in a place probably he wouldn't have been welcomed otherwise. Well, this guy had continued to do ministry and became a pastor. And I mean, he came up, gave me a hug. We about cried when I figured out who it was. The whole church was just like caught in this moment because it was a very unique one. And then we got done. He said, Anthony, I'd love you to be in my own personal Bible study. And he mentored me, and I led so many people to Christ that I got to bring to church. That encounter to me has changed my philosophy and how I pastor. I always want people, I don't care what they've come out of, and I've helped everything from murderers to gangbangers to Satanists to high influential people. I've touched the whole chasm. I want people to come into church and feel, number one, they're loved, we care for them, and I'm not going to judge them where they're at. You come to Christ as you are, and that's how I came to Christ. Amen. I wasn't cleaned up. Jesus has been in the process of cleaning me up.
Both the other interviews with Big Bill and Big Boxer Paul, a couple things I want to ask you. You just made me think of it. A lot of young men out there, they're brought up that men don't cry. That's one question I want to bring to you and see what you feel about that. And then, did your parents? Both of these gentlemen I interviewed before, they were never told that they were loved, that their mom or dad, well, one of them was the mother was very good at it, but the father in particular would never say, I love you. Two things I think that a lot of young people out there, you know, I know a good friend of mine to this day, unfortunately his father passed. He was really, really leaning. I think it still affects him to this moment. He's in his late 50s. He was really leaning for his father to say, I'm proud of you. Mm-hmm. But the notion of guys can't cry, we need to be tough. Parents that are trying to do that by maybe never telling them that they're proud of us, that they love us. What's your take on that? Just because we discussed that a few different episodes already.
I would say this was one of the blessings I had in life. My dad always told me he loved me. My dad always told me you're going to be a champion. And now he was rough, and there was a lot of areas of his life that he couldn't maybe express certain things. But my dad, and the other thing with my dad was always very affectionate. So he'd always give me a hug. All my buddies that came, my dad was kind of the dad of the neighborhood because no one else had dads. And my dad was such a, excuse my French, a badass that no one could tell him any different, right? So if my dad gave you a hug, he'd always hug my buddies, and we'd go and lift weights and do stuff. And my dad was still greatly respected. You couldn't tell dad any different because he could knock anyone out. He was tougher than anyone. But he was a caring, loving man. So to me, the epitome of a man as a man was loving and caring, but he was also strong and very protecting and could handle himself if needed. So that, I guess that framework in me, when I meet a lot of guys and they don't have that, that's one of the things, even in church, when I have guys come in, I'll give them a hug when they come in the church. And I've had and I'll tell them, man, I'm proud of you. You're doing awesome. And I've had guys say, man, I've never heard those words in my life. I got that from my dad. So,
very different answer.
Yeah.
I hope you are enjoying Lessons for Life with Dr. Ron. Now, a quick thank you to our sponsor, BetterHelp. Thanks, BetterHelp, for sponsoring this video. Ever thought your life would look a certain way by now? Career, family, milestones, and it just didn't? It's normal to feel like you've fallen behind. Life changes, graduating, changing jobs, becoming a parent, and facing empty nest can really affect your mental health. If you haven't seen a therapist yet, what's holding you back? And if you have, you know how life-changing it can be. A therapist listens, asks questions, and gives you tools to help you see things differently and make positive changes. BetterHelp makes starting therapy easy. Fill out a quick questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist in a few days, and switch anytime if it's not a right fit. No extra cost. With thousands of reviews and a 4.3 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. Click the link in the description below or go to betterhelp.com/Dr. Ron to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, coppenger.com/DRRON to get 10% off your first month. Now let's get back to the podcast. And how about the tears? Guys can't cry.
I mean,
I know you've talked about weeping and things you've gone through, and many of your good friends, which you just talked about.
Yeah.
If you had stayed in that lifestyle of drinking, several of your friends or many of your friends died.
Yeah.
And you attest that you're here today because you moved into a different direction, didn't continue down that path.
Well, one of my favorite quotes was from Spurgeon, and he said this. Charles Spurgeon said, "Tears are liquid prayer." There is times in life. Number one, David was the most manly man in the Bible. He cried. Jesus is the perfect man, and he cried. There are times where I have seen, and not only in my own life, personal life as a pastor, I've seen more death and tragedy than you could shake a stick at. There are times where I don't have the words to pray. I just simply weep before God because it's beyond my capacity to put words to what I'm seeing. And so I absolutely believe that's a healthy response. Now, I'm not some whiny guy that just cries over, but I'll tell you what, crying in the appropriate season is the best thing in the world you could possibly do, because if you store all that stuff inside of you, it's toxic. And I've learned that it's time to get those emotions. Now, my dad always had this saying, leaders cry on their own time, meaning what? I don't do it often in front of, if I feel that it's not necessarily, I'm not going to fall apart in front of people usually, but I will, just like Jesus did, where it says he went to a solitary place, I will find the proper place to let my emotions out before God, and then I move forward from there. My dad also told me another great saying. He said, don't park at your pain, or you die there. So I'll deal with the pain, and then I put the sucker in drive and move forward.
I talk about rewinding. You need to rewind that. I think there's some heavy topics that a lot of you are facing. In fact, I know that a lot of you are facing many of the challenges, the addictions. And so I hope that you will rewind that. I'm going to pause for a moment and just say, I'd like to support and say thank you to one of our sponsors, Kevin Van Duzer of Go to Golf. So I do want to say that. I'm going to have Bill come in. And one of the things I want to make sure we don't forget to touch on, first of all, this is Pastor Anthony Thomas with Tip of the Spear Church here in Naples. I'll have all his information up on the screen and in the links below. So you can reach out to him and come visit in person if you're here in town. You can you'll be able to follow him online too on Rumble. So we'll have all that information so you can follow Pastor Anthony Thomas at Tip of the Spear. Before we wrap up, we're going to definitely have him answer some questions on some encouraging words. We're going to give him a question on what would be a life lesson for you all. So you're going to want to watch this all the way through. And Bill's going to come in now. And I also want to ask Pastor Anthony a little bit about his church. So I want him to plug his church, and not really plug it, but I want to understand where the name came from, because he wasn't always operating under Tip of the Spear. So Bill doesn't let me forget that. I want that to be answered. And Bill, slide on in.
We're cozying up together. Here we go.
Good morning. Thank you, Ron. Great. Thank you, Pastor Anthony.
My
I have
pleasure.
a few things I'd like to ask, though. I mentioned earlier when we were talking that I do my best to minister to the youth, because that's who's going to take care of us, And there's so they have such a misunderstanding of what a lot of these things that we've talked about are about. Ron mentioned a book called Mask of Masculinity. Many of us men and women, in a sense, were raised under a misguided, you don't cry, you don't feel emotion, men don't do this, women don't do this. And you build little masks in your life that you wear when you go out into the public that are different when you're at home, or they're different when you're alone. The book is by Lewis Howes. It's 9 characteristics of men that you build this mask. Sometimes you need to just take that mask off, take a look at the characteristics and say, I don't need those anymore. Mm-hmm. And many of them are what you talked about. Deep inside of you is a sensitive, loving, emotional man. Mm-hmm. Deep inside of everyone that we've talked to with your background, similar backgrounds, similar circumstances are the same. We as men are emotional. We were squelched of that emotional exercise at a young age and through life. And our society builds that. Every movie you watch, it's a bad this, and if the guy does this to women and takes advantage, and there's always somebody subordinate to somebody superior. And it's a teaching of non-truth. The real truth is in the Bible, and that's in love. And love and peace and understanding and thanksgiving and gratitude. That's what it's all about. So in that teaching that I give, I try to make these things stand out to the boys and let them understand that the community of the church is where you find the community of your like-minded people. And that's what you need to be around. You don't need to prove anything. Now, Ron talked a little bit about your family. I absolutely love the way you feel about your father. That is awesome. People don't understand the love that you feel from your father, what that does. So you had love and closeness in your family from your father mostly. Am I right?
Mom too. They both of my parents were fighters, and they both came out of a lot of stuff. They could never make it work together, and it's probably because they were both alpha leaders. I mean, my mom is formidable, and I love her dearly too. But they could never put it together in a relationship.
Yeah.
But I learned from both of them, no matter what, fight. I mean, that was the overarching message. And when they were unified together growing up, I mean, they were unstoppable. I mean, my parents were both apex in whatever they did.
Yeah.
And so I learned with both of them resiliency, and I learned with both of them, no matter what you push forward. I think those would be the two overarching principles that both of them had and role modeled.
That's awesome. If you don't get that from your parents, and if you parents don't give that, where are your children going to get that from? Where are they going to get that? Today, in today's society, not the right place. So you're so fortunate to have had that in your life. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it brings you to today. Mm-hmm. Where did you, after all you've been through, all the death you've seen, all the corruption you've seen, all the what do you want to say? Just all the criminal life that you've seen.
Satanic activity.
Yeah, satanic activity. Where did you learn your love for man? Did that just finally come out of you?
I heard it. I love I think when someone really understands a topic, no matter what it is, they can sum it up in a statement. And I always look for wisdom. Someone that has to use 10,000 words to explain something really doesn't know the topic. So there was different quotes in my life that have stood out. One of them was this. They did a study asking the question, and it was on, I think, in a female book, and they asked the question, what is a perfect man? And they came up with a statement to me that was the best I've ever heard. They said, a perfect man is steel wrapped in velvet. And when I pondered that thought, it did two things. Number one, I think that is Christ. Christ is steel wrapped in velvet. And then it caused me to really understand how to help men. Some men come in that are naturally more steel. That was me. I had to learn whatever velvet you see on me, I've had to learn. It wasn't naturally there. Some guys are more velvet, especially our younger generation that grew up in a much more safe space environment. Okay, they're naturally more velvet. You got to teach them some steel. So to me, the perfect man is steel wrapped in velvet, and then the perfect man understands when it's steel time and when it's velvet time.
Well,
there are times where someone's broken and hurting that God needs me to be velvet to them. There are also other times where there's evil and there's injustices and there's wicked things where God says, Anthony, I need you to be steel right now. So I think the thing is, do I do it perfectly? No. Sometimes I get it the wrong order, but that is the high mark that I'm trying to hit. I think it's a great high mark for all men. When we can learn to walk that in balance, then we become the men God's called us to be.
Well said, Pastor Anthony. Thank you. That is, you need to rewind that one and hear that again.
Absolutely rewind.
So, and I just have two more. I mentioned about sensitive and emotional beings. Men are. The book Ron and I mentioned, Mask of Masculinity, wipes girlfriends, you need to get that too and read about your man and understand where he's coming from, what kind of things he's fighting inside every day when he comes out. Everything he approaches, every action he takes has a little bit of whatever he learned in his early life in there. And last thing I want to ask you, Pastor Anthony, you have become, and your church is, such a humble and kind person, and such a humble and kind church with such a rough, tough background. Everyone that finds a church and finds that community needs to understand it doesn't always come from the most studied minds, the most biblical and spiritual spewings that people can toss out. It comes from the sincerity of the heart, of what I've been through, what I've realized, and what I present as my truth. And Anthony has found his truth, and he shares it with everyone once a week, twice a week, any opportunity he gets. That's a legacy that I think you're going to continue to raise, continue to show, and leave with us.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud to be part of it.
Thank you, brother.
As much as I'd like to go more often, but he is a light in the darkness, in a more, a lot of churches are a lot of kumbaya stuff. Pastor Anthony, you get that loving feeling, but you don't have to feel that way. You feel the honesty of the truth of the world, not the honesty of what kind of it alludes to and all the what's the na-na-nu-nu of being kind to everybody in a loving way that is expressed through the worldly outlook of it. He's sincere, and he has the walk of Jesus love in him. And thank you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
So, wow, there's a lot of powerful stuff here. You were originally in Oregon. I know you preached it. You preached for how many years? Been a pastor for?
I've been a pastor full-time since this coming February will be 20 years, and I've been preaching for probably about 24.
So talk just briefly, because I met you from moving from Miami to here. Mm-hmm. So a little bit about what brought you to Naples from Miami.
I was the head administrator at night for the University of Miami. I ran all the crisis response for almost 9 years. So I saw everything you could imagine with thousands of kids at night. I was responsible for the whole campus, from deaths to suicides to rapes to overdoses to you name it, I've seen it. And
wow.
Did a great job at that, tried to keep an entire campus community safe, and no one ever questioned me on my job performance. And it was every night, 12-hour shifts, buckle up because you're on for the ride. So I did that. Did that take a toll on me mentally and emotionally? Probably so. Didn't even realize it till afterwards. But I ended up getting fired because I wouldn't wear a mask or take a jab. And that was during the COVID stuff. And once I figured out what was going on, it took me a second. It was such a masterful psyop that happened. I didn't know right out of the gate what was going on. But I had 4 or 5 different people in my life that influenced me during that to show me what was going on. And then once I saw it, and I couldn't unsee it. And I knew at that point I was being set up, probably by God, for a big battle because of the position I had. And I was literally like the dad of that entire campus, and I had an immense amount of influence with the students. So when I took the stand that I wasn't going to wear a mask, and they tried to have me arrested, the police officers, some of them wouldn't come out because of the respect they had for me and the work I did, because I worked with them for 9 years. And the other thing was, they tried to crush me in every way they possibly could. And God got me through that very difficult time. That's what brought me out to Naples. And then I met some fellow freedom fighters here, one of them being Alfie Oakes, whose establishment we're at today. I had an attorney friend of mine said, "Do you know this guy named Alfie?" And I said, "No, I've never heard of him." He said, "You guys need to meet. You have kindred spirit." And we met, and I love what he's done in the community. And he has balls of steel also. And I love that about him.
Shout out to Alfie. We love it here at Seat to Table. Did you feel, so you said you came to Naples, but What was the draw? It could have been anywhere. What was the draw to Naples?
I had been here once at a book signing event. I remember I thought it was a cool community, and then I had some friends of mine that had moved here, and God had asked me right before I knew I was going to get fired. I was at a church service in Alabama with a wild prophet named Robin Bullock, great spirit-filled, awesome, powerful church, and it was in the middle of worship, and God said, I want you to start a church. And so I'm like, how's this going to work? I'm an administrator there. I got all these responsibilities. Well, I had no idea I was going to be fired in the matter of a few weeks because this big showdown was going to happen. So when I got here, I knew that I'd called to start church. And I can tell you, I've had two different things since I've come here. Number one, all hell has bust loose throughout. I mean, I've had Satan come at me in every way you possibly could to stop what God was doing. And number two, I've seen God touch different people's hearts and show me an immense amount of kindness and favor that, favor you don't deserve. So I have people sometimes like, well, Pastor, why did you get this opportunity, whatever? And I just tell them very honestly, God, right? I didn't ask for the attack I've been under, and I didn't ask for the favor, but God gave me both of them, allowed both of them. And you know what? Both of them draw us closer to God, because there are times in the attacks I've been through that I had to literally hold on to God to get through. And there's other times where whenever God shows me favor, just like today to be in this interview, I want to represent him as best as I possibly can.
Pastor Anthony Thomas, we talked about barroom brawler turned believer to power pack pastor of Tip of the Spear Church in Naples, Florida. You're going to have to check it out. He's on Rumble. You want to listen, you can listen to him no matter where you are, so you have no excuse. But how does a Marine, maybe some anger, ultimately become a pastor? I don't think we really specifically asked that movement of how you got to where you are.
I believe this. If you're going to be a pastor, God has to call you to do it. Any ministry you start, the Bible of Jesus is very clear. He said, flesh gives birth to flesh, but spirit gives birth to spirit. God calls certain people into the front lines of ministry. I would not have been able to go through the 20 years I've gone through. I mean, brother, I've been through more attacks than you could shake a stick at. And to me, when I see people, I call them anointed and self-appointed, individuals, you're not going to last long, because if God calls you, then he will give you the grace to do it. And I've had to times go, God, you called me to do this. I don't want to do it anymore. Give me grace to move on. And he always has. So here's the deal. Just kind of like if you're playing sports, if a coach calls you, you can choose to respond or not respond. But if the coach didn't call you off the bench and you go out there, you're going to be asked to go back on the bench. All of us have been called by God to do something. Okay, so what we need to find out is what that is, hear his voice, and then obey. Anytime I've got outside of my calling, things don't work well because there's not a grace on it. So when I stay within the lane God gave me, I do very well. And I would encourage your individuals watching, find the lane God's called you to. If you don't know what it is, ask him. Say, God, where do you want me? He will show you. When you stay within that lane, that's the providence God's put in your life, there will be grace on you to fulfill what he's called you to do.
I hope you're enjoying Lessons for Life with Dr. Ron. We're excited to be part of an Amazon Associate Program. We're going to be bringing some products to the table and some books for you to enjoy. And in fact, today, one of my mentors, near and dear to my heart, Pastor Sarah Gardner, this is her book, I've Seen Heaven. The bottom states Pastor Sarah's glorious journey to heaven and a life filled with supernatural encounters. So this is going to be attached below. Definitely would appreciate your support if you pick this book up. She would appreciate it. Also, I just finished from Jed Coppenger, I believe it is. This is interesting. Fake Christianity. It says at the bottom, 10 traps of an inauthentic faith. An inauthentic faith and how to avoid them. So this is another book I'll attach below. I just completed it by author Jed Coppenger. And so these two books will be attached. And again, I'm going to bring these things to the table. Your purchase of these books helps support this channel, and we really appreciate it. People ask me how I can give back, and certainly no better way. When we attach these links, you pay the same pricing, and it just helps support the channel. So again, I've Seen Heaven and Fake Christianity. And now back to the podcast. Tip of the spear. Where did that name come about?
Tip of the spear comes, it's a military term for those who are on the front lines. I did not want a church that was warming pews, drinking Starbucks, or wearing skinny jeans, as I said. I wanted a church that loved Jesus, that's raw, that preaches the Bible unapologetically, and is willing to go out in the middle of the trenches and fight the devil head on. So that's what I do. I train up other warriors. A word was given to me by a prophet many years ago named Paul Keith Davis. He said, Anthony, you've been given the grace to be a champion. And then he said, one day in the kingdom, you'll be known as a trainer of champions. I believe I'm now in the second part of that word. My job is to train up champions like yourself, where I get to put something in their life. You're going to go out, fulfill the call, and champion what God's called you to do. But if I was able to influence you in any way, then I'm fulfilling my call.
This is so good. If you're enjoying this, please share this. You might have a son or daughter that needs to hear this, husband or wife, friend or family member. We really appreciate you share this out. You're a family man. We didn't talk about that. But the simple question I have, your children, if you think back, do they look at you as dad, a totally different man than maybe they knew when they were younger, in their younger years, because your kids are grown up now?
I would say with every kid, I let them give the report card. I don't know what it yet is. In fact, I just had a great talk with my oldest son, who's 26 now. He's in Portland, Oregon. And he gave me a report card. And there was some things good, there was some things bad, and there was some things, obviously we parent to the level of age we're at also. I was a dad at 20 years old. So you know what you know at the time. I have a simple saying that I believe in: all is grace. I hope all of my kids will be graceful with me because I've made a lot of mistakes. As a parent, I think you try your best. You make mistakes. If you knew what you knew earlier, you probably would have done some things different. So I hope for all of them, they'll find grace in my life. And because one day they'll all be parents and they'll find out it's a lot harder when you're doing it than when you're watching. I know for me, I look at my dad now a lot more gracious than I did when I was younger, because now I know what that pact feels like. My oldest son told me, he goes, now Dad, I can't imagine you having 4 kids by the time you were 32 and what that would have felt like. So, I would just say all of us be gracious, because you never know, you're going to be in that shoes one day, and it's a lot harder to walk out than when you're watching it.
Well, all right. We're almost at the 45-minute mark. We seem to say that every week, but I have a few more questions and we're going to wrap up. So we talked about how there's a lot of people struggling out there, a lot of addiction issues. And since you've walked through this yourself, a question I had written down for in the encouragement section is, what is something that someone listening who's drinking their life away right now, what encouragement would you have for them right now that's really stuck in an area that you were once, not all that long ago?
I would ask this question: what does it feel like to not be numb? Because when you're numb, you feel nothing. Now, it's okay, because when I got off the booze, which was over 24 years ago, I've been sober, I felt an immense amount of anger and pain once the booze because I was numb. And that is where I had to start learning to take all those emotions to Christ. But I'll tell you what, I would rather have gone through that experience, and I'd rather at times have feeling, whether it's right feelings or not, than have no feeling at all. Numbness is a horrible feeling, and that's what most people drink to get numb. Nothing wrong, like I said, if you want to have a beer or two and you're watching a game, or have a glass of wine, you're out on a date, that's fantastic. God made wine, and Jesus' first miracle is with wine. But if you are drinking to get numb because you can't deal with the emotions you're dealing with, you need to feel again what it feels like to feel. And then those emotions, you take them to Christ and let Him help you start to sort them out.
Could you give some of our listeners that don't know Christ, that don't know where to start in the Bible, it's a difficult question to ask of people giving a testimony, but you in particular, you've encouraged so many people. What are some starting points? I always like to give some steps. Someone that's never opened the book, doesn't really know, has a yearning to learn more about Christ, but just doesn't know how to get started, what could you share with our listeners?
This is going to be very unorthodox advice, but it's one. You are drowning right now in your sin. Okay? And if I was out in a body of water right now and I saw a man or woman drowning in the middle of the ocean, they don't need 10 theological books to study to understand help. That's what you do. You cry out for help to Jesus. You ask him to save you. He will extend his arm of love and grace and pull you out of the pit you're in. Then after you get in the boat, you can learn a lot more about the person that saved you. I'd encourage you to go to the Gospel of John. Great one to start. Just learn about Jesus. But don't wait to find out thinking you need to know 20 answers. Ask for help. You're drowning right now. Jesus saves. That's what he came to do.
Awesome.
Woo! Well, we normally close out with a question. I think this is a duplication, but I'm going to read it anyway because I wrote down, what life lesson would you share with our viewers that are falling on hard times right now, feeling hopeless and caught up in the chaos of the world? So you kind of answered it, but is there any final closing thoughts? So many people feel so lost, lonely, desperate. They feel like they're caught up in kind of the monotony of life and that there's nothing more. We've talked with, we won't name names, but someone here in particular, Bill, we talked about another podcast who just said to Bill one time, is there nothing more to life? Is this just how it's going to be forever?
There are 2 words I would give you. Cry out. A cry will always get the attention of God. God will always respond when he hears your cry. You don't need 10 degrees in theology to learn how to cry out, help me, God. It's the best prayer you could ever pray. When I've been in the most difficult seasons in my life, that's the only word that could come out, God, help. And so if you're at that spot, just cry out to God. Let him put your life together. If you could put it together, you would have already done it. You can't. And that's the things I've come to in my life. I've been through a lot of stuff that I couldn't get myself out of. And I simply cried out, God, help me. It's the greatest prayer you could ever pray.
Awesome. Bill, you have any final closing words at all?
No, just thank you. It's just, Pastor Anthony, you're just a breath of fresh air. Every time I hear you, every time I see you, every time I look at you, you're just that different, that kind of person that stands out. And I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Bob.
We just have to live from a, make it real kind of thing. And Pastor Anthony makes it real. Some of his responses, like he said, may be unorthodox or maybe something you just don't hear in most of the worldly things you hear throughout most of the day. But they're all truth. They're all rooted in truth and in the love that he has for people. I think it's awesome. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Jim.
Well, this was Pastor Anthony Thomas, Tip of the Spear Church, barroom brawler turned believer to Power Pack pastor. Please like and subscribe. We are on YouTube. We appreciate if you subscribe to our channel. We're on all social media platforms. Social media can be used for a lot of things in the negative, but we're using it for God's grace and God's goodness. So please, give that thumbs up gently. Pop up that like button is very powerful. Look in the links below. We're going to have Pastor Anthony's information for Tip of the Spear Church and where you can find him on Rumble. So all of that will be below. And so many of you asked how you can support the channel. There'll be some links for some products and some support of our sponsors like Go to Golf with Kevin Van Duzer. As I already mentioned, we appreciate anyone who wants to be a sponsor to the channel. And with that, I'm going to ask Pastor Anthony to do a final blessing, which I just heard on Sunday night. And would you be willing to give the blessing where you said, Lord bless you, Lord keep you? I love that prayer.
Yeah. It's the prayer that God asked Aaron the priest to pray. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious toward you. And may the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.
Thank you very much, Pastor Anthony. This was amazing. I hope you watched all the way through. Thank you for watching on our channel. And with that, we're signing off, and God bless you.